Before tutorials became compulsory, before quest markers turned worlds into guided tours, there was a brief but influential period where games assumed something radical. That the player was curious, patient, and willing to fail. And to understand that era, you can trace a clear evolutionary line through three landmark dungeon crawlers: Dungeon Master, the Eye of the Beholder series, and the genre-defining leap made by Ultima Underworld. Together, they showed how difficulty, immersion, and player agency were once inseparable. So in this video, we're going to explore the foundations of that design philosophy. Games that treated difficulty not as a barrier, but as a tool for immersion and trusted players to learn, adapt, and engage without constantly being guided, protected, or managed. So join me as we head into the deep dark, where understanding is survival. Modern gaming is often built on the concept of safety. We're accustomed to environmental hint overload, the kind of design that treats a player like a tourist rather than a participant. We have objective pointers, immersion-breaking minimaps, and the ubiquitous yellow paint splashed across every ledge to tell us exactly where we are allowed to climb. But to understand where this philosophy of grit and discovery began, let's start here. Dungeon Master. It's the blueprint for tension. It doesn't derive its difficulty from inflated enemy HP or bullet sponge bosses, but from a question a lot of modern hand-holding games are too afraid to ask. Are you capable of surviving without a tether, or are you just wanting the game to let you win with little effort? Before the era of the floating waypoint, the walls were your only guide. No mercy, just you, a flickering torch, and the dark. Right from the start, your party isn't a team of heroes. It's a group struggling against a relentless environment. Released in 1987, this was the title that shattered the slow, methodical pace of the past. It moved away from the static turn-based combat of giants like Wizardry, where you could sit and ponder your next move indefinitely. But this game dragged the genre into a live, breathing world. Movement is locked to a 3D perspective grid, but the clock never stops. Stamina, mana, hunger and thirst eat you from the inside out, whether you're paying attention or not. Even the light is a consumable resource. Your torches burn down in real time, and if they sputter out, the dungeon falls into a suffocating, grainy dimness where you can barely make out the walls. And so you are left standing in the gloom, listening to the drip of water and the scuttle of things that don't need light to find you. The game doesn't warn you, it simply lets you fail. Combat isn't a test of reflexes, it's a test of resource management. And sometimes the smartest thing you can do isn't slaying the monster. It's backpedaling, desperately fumbling for a wall switch to drop a portcullis between you and the threat, and waiting in the dimness for your stamina to crawl back, while your food reserves tick towards zero. Then there's the magic. Now, most games give you a spell book, but Dungeon Master gives you a language. You learn by finding scrolls hidden throughout the dungeon, which provide the syllables, specific combinations of runes you must manually click to form a spell. But success isn't guaranteed. Your character's fatigue and hidden skill levels determine if the magic takes hold, or simply fizzles. And so it turns spellcasting into a skill of preparation and literacy, rather than just a menu choice. If Dungeon Master was the blueprint, its 1989 sequel, Chaos Strikes Back, was the nightmare. It didn't just iterate, it stripped away the last remaining illusions of fairness. The game makes its intentions clear from the very start. Unlike its predecessor, which gave you a moment to breathe, Chaos Strikes Back drops you immediately into a claustrophobic frenzy of man-eating worms. And if you can survive that opening hurdle, the game starts to give more than it takes. This was a non-linear labyrinth. designed specifically for those who had already mastered the first game. While a new party could technically survive, the difficulty curve was clearly balanced for importing your veteran champions from the original. It demanded a player who was already fully competent with the mechanical nuances of the engine. Someone who didn't need a tutorial to understand the stakes. The vertical, floor-by-floor logic of the first game was shattered, replaced by a complex, interconnected web of paths that looped and spiraled on themselves to intentionally disorientate you, forcing you to navigate a world that felt even more dangerous. Even the smallest victory, like picking up a simple key or equipping rags, feels like you're personally reclaiming ground from an indifferent, hostile machine. You aren't being handed a victory by a sympathetic developer here. You are earning it through pure, calculated survival. By 1991, the industry had noticed that the real-time dungeon wasn't just a fad, it was the future. And this led to Eye of the Beholder, a game that took the Dungeon Master blueprint and draped it in the heavy, prestigious silk of the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons license. Developed by Westwood Associates, this was the moment the genre stepped out of the shadows of the Atari ST and into the high-colour era of PC. It didn't invent the mechanics, it refined them for a mass audience. It presented VGA graphics, cinematic cutscenes, and a structured narrative. But with all that polish came a subtle shift, because the focus moved towards narrative immersion. This was one of the first titles to bridge the gap between technical simulation and cinematic storytelling. It featured detailed portraits and environmental storytelling that made the sewers of Waterdeep feel like a real place with a specific history. You weren't just surviving an abstract engine, you were navigating a highly produced, immersive world that sought to make the grid feel invisible through sheer detail. And the momentum reached its absolute zenith with the 1991 sequel, The Legend of Darkmoon. Now this wasn't just more of the same. It was a massive expansion of what the grid crawler could achieve. It introduced outdoor environments, complex forest maps, and a multi-tower structure that felt far less linear than the sewers of the first game. And Westwood pushed the immersion further by adding interludes and a significantly higher level of environmental interaction. You weren't just toggling switches, you were solving intricate multi-stage puzzles and managing a party through branching paths that led to different endings. It felt like the definitive version of the tile-based dungeon, a high watermark for the genre before the technical landscape began to shift. In the meantime though, this peak was short-lived. Following a disagreement over creative direction and ownership, Westwood Associates broke away from publisher Strategic Simulations. And so when the highly anticipated third installment, Assault on Myth Drannor, arrived in 1993, the original architects were gone. Developed in-house by SSI, the third game lacked the meticulous pacing and atmospheric polish of its predecessors. Meanwhile, the original team took that creative soul and poured it into Lands of Lore, a game that refined the aesthetic beauty of the grid one last time, before a small team called Looking Glass Studios were looking to the fully 3D future. Released just months apart, Ultima Underworld, the Stygian Abyss, didn't just compete with the grid, it made the very concept feel obsolete. For the first time, players weren't jumping from square to square. Not only were they walking, they were looking up and down, jumping over pits, and swimming through 3D water. The era of the immersive sim had begun. While previous games relied on clever shortcuts to simulate depth using 2D images, Underworld was calculating a genuine three-dimensional environment in real time. Before this, every dungeon floor was a flat plane. Underworld introduced slopes and stairs, Being able to walk up an incline or look down from a balcony into a lower pit was a revelation. It's forced players to actually consider the geometry of the room rather than just their coordinates on a map. The technical ambition extended to the world itself, introducing rudimentary physics and item interactions that made the Stygian Abyss feel like a physical, tangible space. It's utilised a sophisticated lighting system and texture mapping on every surface, a massive tax on the hardware of the time, which consequently required a small viewing window. But even through that window, players saw something revolutionary. A world that wasn't made of tiles, but of possibilities. And its 1993 sequel, Ultima Underworld 2: Labyrinth of Worlds, was a masterclass in scale. It didn't just want to simulate a single dungeon, it wanted to simulate an entire multiverse. The engine was widened, and the stakes were pushed far beyond the walls of the Stygian Abyss. You were travelling through a black rock gem to 8 distinct parallel dimensions. From Britannia to frozen tundras, prison towers, ancient mage schools, and even the ethereal void. It also introduced deeper NPC interactions and a plot that tied directly into the main Ultima series epic. However, this massive ambition came at a price. While the first game felt like a perfectly tuned clock, every level feeding into the next in a tight logical descent, Underworld 2 felt more fragmented. Because the worlds were so radically different, that sense of a singular oppressive ecosystem was replaced by a series of disconnected hubs. It was technically superior, but it lacked the laser-focused, suffocating atmosphere that made the original Abyss so unforgettable. The era of the grid crawler didn't so much die as it did evolve into the foundation of the modern first-person experience. The DNA of these games leaked into every corner of the industry. I mean, the technical magic of the Underworld engine led directly to the all-time classics System Shock and Thief. These games took the capable player philosophy along with the physical world building of the Abyss and polished them into new levels of immersion. Without that struggle to survive in those early corridors, we wouldn't have the atmospheric storytelling of BioShock or the emergent gameplay of Deus Ex. Even today, we see the influence of these pioneering games in the tough but fair philosophy of the Souls series. Games that refuse to hold your hand and instead demand your attention. They remind us that the most memorable experiences in gaming aren't the ones where we are guided to a trophy, but the ones where we are dropped into the dark and forced to find our own way out. The grid may have vanished, and the graphics may have evolved, but the question remains the same. Are you capable of surviving without a tether, or are you just waiting for the game to let you win?